Full range of services, from professional disc jockeys and MCs to catering and photography. When the details of your special day must be perfect, call us first. Wedding receptions, corporate parties, school functions, birthday celebrations, and more. We also have Birmingham's largest selection of karaoke tracks available. With over 40 years combined experience, Full Range Entertainment can provide you with the talent and professionalism you need and deserve to make your next event one you'll never forget. For more information on the full range of services we offer, call 533-HITS. That's 533-HITS. Or check us out on our website at fullrangeentertainment.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, would like to welcome everybody to a very special edition of Beyond Ringside, your home for wrestling, mixed martial arts, boxing, sports talk, and a whole lot more. Host and moderator, yours truly, the Magic City Motor Mouth Fast Eddie Layne, normally joined by tag team partners, the Wicked Nemesis and Mark Mabo Bowman. They'll be rejoining us on Sunday, 5:30 p.m. Central, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. I am joined for a very special interview by the National Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight Champion. And I do believe the current count's up to 5, isn't it, Chief?
You got it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Scrap Daddy is in the house. Scrap Iron, Adam Pearce. Welcome in, Mr. Pearce.
You know it is always a good day when you're beyond ringside, is it not?
I take that as a very high compliment, and I do appreciate it.
And that's exactly how you should have taken it.
You have been... I'm going to change the question because is there a way that I can rent some of your frequent flyer miles?
Well, you could try, although, relatives, family members, hanger-ons, friends, people that want to go places all the time that are hitting me up every other day might have something to say about that.
Hey, look, I would have bribed you to take me to Australia, dude.
Hey, man, I'd love to go down on there, and thankfully here in a month or so, actually I don't even know what's today, is it September? Yeah, in about a month and a half, I'll be down there again for a nice tour. Always good to be down under, if you will.
You have been more places defending the NWA World Championship than most people have active brain cells. You have covered the majority of the lower 48. You've been overseas. You have probably got one of the most stacked schedules of anybody in our industry. Now, the last time that we spoke, you were coming off the injury, and you were in the process of one last ride.
Right.
Straight up, did you imagine in your wildest dreams that one last ride would be as crazy as it has been, take you as many places as it has, and last as long as it has so far?
No. If I answered otherwise, I'd be flat lying to you. I never thought, looking at potentially the end of a career that I've loved and had a huge passion for, and anybody that really talks to me knows that. If I knew that I would have the outpouring of support, people reaching out from all sides of this globe, I mean, I've been blown away, and I'm extremely grateful, and I think that's something that I'll always be able to look back on with tears in my eye, frankly, to be perfectly honest with you. I'd never imagined the outpouring that I would get from the wrestling fans, the wrestling community, my peers especially. It feels good to have the respect of your peers. It feels even better to touch people that you didn't know were there. And I will always be humbled by the reception and the outpouring, man. And it rolls on. I'm still riding, unbelievably.
You make a reference to being able to touch people. And I took a look at your Facebook page, and you make a reference to someone being able to touch you back, and it was a photograph that you posted on Facebook about a young gentleman by the name of Gavin.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the background on that picture?
I work, as anybody who's followed my career or the careers of CM Punk or Colt Cabana for any time, when we first broke in and started touring, and this is when we all were living in Chicago, one of the promoters that we worked for early on was Ed Hellier, who ran St. Paul Championship Wrestling, which is then renamed Steel Domain Wrestling out of the Twin Cities, up there in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. And over the last 6 months or so, I've had the good fortune of being able to go back and reconnect with Ed, and have gone back to the Twin Cities and worked a couple of events. And on one occasion, he pulled me aside as the show was getting ready to get going, and he said, "Hey, I've got a special fan who's in the house who would really be honored to take a picture with you or whatnot." And this was Gavin, who's a 4-year-old little boy who's grown up a lot harder than anybody ever should have to, suffered from a humongous brain tumor and had cancer, and continues to fight that to this day. But to see the smile on his face and the way that he enjoyed the matches, and to know that all it took for me to do was smile at him and talk to him like a little boy should be talked to and give him a picture and shake his hand. He's been through things that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, and here he is, only 4 years old, and that was a small price to pay to see a smile on a kid's face. Frankly, his parents don't know how long they're going to have to spend with their son, and if I could put a smile on his face even for one day, I feel like I've done my job, and that's a proud moment for me.
You make a reference to wishing things on your worst enemy, and you've mentioned this person's name just a few minutes ago. Some folks would have it that Colt Cabana and Adam Pearce, it's not a rivalry. It's not a chase for a championship. It's turned into a blood feud in more ways than one. This is a person that you are currently still embroiled in a series known as 7 Levels of Hate. You've gone through an I Quit match, which is still technically questionable, if I remember correctly, as far as the ending goes, because I would
say so. I'll argue that till I don't draw a breath anymore. Yeah, I ended up saying I quit, not because I wanted to, not because I thought it was fair. Colt Cabana, and this was again in St. Paul, Minnesota. As we go back, maybe I should just blow Minnesota off the map, but I Quit match in front of a packed house in Hopkins, Minnesota, 1,200 people. I've got the top rope wrapped around the throat of Colt Cabana 2 or 3 times. I'm pulling that rope as hard as I can. The man passes out. He's unable to provide oxygen to his brain. The referee, a referee who I have had on a number of occasions officiate my matches, Jay Soltis, I don't mind putting his name out there because I hope people will egg his house. The man does what any responsible official in professional wrestling would do when he sees one of the competitors inside the ring, not just in danger of becoming injured, but in this case, in danger of something much worse. He did the right thing. Cabana was not responsive. He was not drawing a breath. He was turning blue. The man was done. And I think if you had Colt Cabana on your program, he would tell you right now to your face that he was done. The referee stopped the match. Cabana could no longer continue. Now, the controversy, and forgive me, and you can bleep me if you want, but some call it controversy. I call it bullshit. Cabana, miraculous. I don't know if he belongs on the 69 Knicks or what the deal is, but Willis Reed miraculously wakes up from his slumber that I put him in, takes the microphone from the ring announcer who's about to rightfully announce that I have earned the victory, earned it. Didn't steal it, didn't cheat for it. It's an I Quit match, anything goes. I was the better man, and Cabana wants to speak into the microphone. Never did I, nor will I ever, say the word, I quit. Then he has the gall to say, so if you want to walk out of here with that championship, then you get back in here and you finish the job. And that referee, who 5 minutes previous to that made the best decision of his life, erased it all and decided, oh, well, I guess he can breathe now. I guess he's not in danger of dying in the ring. I guess he really didn't say I quit, and he restarts the match. Now, you tell me if that's fair.
Nope.
Tell me, as I enter that ring, and now the roles are completely reversed. I find the top rope wrapped around my throat. Cabana's also got me locked in his Billy Goat's Curse reverse Boston Crab. I'm within seconds of going black. I guess I should have just let myself go black and never said the words I quit. I guess I should have put myself potentially in a casket. I could have filed a grievance. I could have called the home office of the National Wrestling Alliance. I could have filed paperwork and cried and called lawyers and done everything I wanted to do. In my heart of hearts, I know, without question, I won that match. And today, as we talk, I wouldn't be down 3-2 in this series. I'd be up 3-2, and I'd be ready to close this thing out on the 30th in Oregon. But that's not the way the record books will ever reflect it.
However, 2 weeks later, at Metro Pro Wrestling, 2 out of 3 falls, you did, in fact, unequivocally capture the NWA World Championship, Stage 5. And now, for those who thought that, excuse me, my apologies, Stage 4. My brain is in so many different directions. I'm trying to remember so many facts, it's kind of hard to keep them all straight for a simple guy like me.
Well, yeah, and you got me hot now thinking about Hopkins in stage 3. Okay, anyways, go ahead.
But you did manage in stage 4 to capture. You were down 3-0. At any point, did you feel like writing yourself off and say, okay, fine, this is obviously a case of the immovable object can't be moved by the irresistible force of Adam Pearce?
No, well, why would I do that? What would that accomplish? I mean, here's the fact. I called for this thing, right? I'm the one who issued the challenge for 7 Levels of Hate. I'm the one who said, yes, Colt Cabana, you defeated me on 2 occasions for the world's greatest prize. So now I've got to better you. I've got to do it double. I've got to beat you 4 times or I'm not a man. I'm the one who said that. I put it all on the line. And I told the world if I'm not able to beat Colt Cabana in a best of 7, that I will walk away from the National Wrestling Alliance. Knowing that I've got a hell of a lot of pride, first of all, and probably the biggest ego in the business, and I don't mind admitting that. Okay? Knowing that, understanding all of that, is there any way I could look at myself in the mirror and know that it was okay for me to walk away? And
No.
say, never. It could never happen. Now, let me tell you about a champion. Let me tell you about fighting through adversity. Let me tell you about great being elite. July 21st, Kansas City, Kansas for Metro Pro Wrestling. I walked into that building with 102 fever. I shouldn't have been in the ring. If there was a doctor there with worth anything, he probably wouldn't have allowed me to compete. And not only did I have to go in the ring and face a man who beat me 3 straight, not only did I have to go in there dehydrated, 102 fever, puking my guts out for 3 days previous, then I had to go in there and do not just one match, but in effect 2 out of 3 falls.
Yeah.
It doesn't even happen in this day and age in professional wrestling. It doesn't even happen. And 38 minutes later, redemption in some small form, because again, that only brought me to 3-1. But in some small form, I can look across the ring at that man, Colt Cabana, and he knows, if he didn't know to that point, he knows at that exact moment who he's dealing with. And now we get that momentum rolling the other way.
And on top of everything else, you have still, as I stated earlier, got a tremendously stacked schedule. Not only you've made the reference that you're planning another trip to Australia, you've got appearances all across the country. For great,
Brother, it doesn't stop for me, man.
It really
the train never stops. I took 3 days. I just got back today from 3 days at the beach, taking a week off. I get on a plane Thursday night. I go to Milwaukee. I appear Friday night in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I drive 7 hours the next morning to St. Louis, suburban St. Louis, to Marion, Illinois, and I compete. All right? The week after that, not only do I go to Virginia, okay, but then I'm going to fly clear across the entire continent and appear in Salem, Oregon for stage 6 of 7 Levels of Hate. I don't stop. You don't stop the machine. You don't stop the machine. But here's the best part of this. When I run through Milwaukee, when I run through Marion, Illinois, when I run through Virginia and I get to Salem, Oregon, it's going to be a Texas death match. And Cabana has found out. Stage 5 was a dog collar match.
right.
Now, you can put me in a wrestling match with anybody on the planet, and anybody can lose a wrestling match on any day. But I do bet you dollars to donuts you put me in a fight, and 9 times out of 10, I'm going to walk out of there. And I walked out of Boston. Now it's 3-2. Now it's a Texas death match. This is right up my alley. Cabana better be scared.
And for those who might remember an alter ego, so to speak, you knew I'd bring it up eventually, known as Pearce, Texas Ranger. The tenacity, the toughness, the single-minded dedication to not only defending the World Championship, but to winning and taking this back to 3-3, where it's all...
Still the option. Still the option. I mean, here's the bottom line. I got the 10 pounds of gold, right? That's great. I've worn it 5 times. I've been down in history as one of only 4 men ever to do it. That's an honor. That's a privilege. That's something I'll always be proud of. But come Salem, Oregon, if I'm put down and I can't get up, it's all erased. It's done. I step away from the National Wrestling Alliance, And all the accolades and all the trophies and all the championships, it stops. It's done. Because let's be real, man, without the NWA, I don't have much of a career. My loyalties lie where they lie. I like them that way. I'm simple in that way. I need a purpose, I need a focus, and that thing for 5 years has been the 10 pounds of gold. There ain't a person on this planet involved in professional wrestling who, when they think about the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, at some point, when they look at the modern era, is not going to think of me. And I like it that way.
Very true.
I like it that way a lot.
You have been one of the most visible. You've been one of the most prolific and one of the most dedicated champions that the industry of professional wrestling has seen in a long time. I mean, and I've said this without you being on the line with us. I've said this in public and in private. But you lead me to another date, and this is recent history. August 17, 2012. There are a number of people who call it a new day for the National Wrestling Alliance. It is now public knowledge that a company out of the Texas market has purchased the rights and everything, and they are now the new spearhead organization for the National Wrestling Alliance. And I've had a chance to speak with Bruce Tharp, the new CEO, and he talks about a vision for the National Wrestling Alliance, taking everything full scale, bringing the promotions together as a more tightly knit unit, as a network that will communicate better. Considering the fact that you're on the road as much as you are defending the championship, do you see this accelerating the visibility and the nature of the championship in and of itself to take it to a more to the next level, as some would say? Or do you think that you've already been one step ahead of the curve?
I would like to think, and this could be, of course I'm biased because I obviously approve of what I've done personally with the championship. I'd like to think that I've pioneered that in a way. Certainly, I think it's easy to see that being as visible and remaining as relevant as I have wearing that championship and always being proud to do so, that it's obvious where my loyalties and where my desires lie. I'd love nothing more. I've said this publicly, I've said it privately, I've said it to people who didn't like to hear it, I've said it to people who believe the same things. I'd love nothing more than to see the National Wrestling Alliance regain a place in this business that's on a higher level than it is now. And I'd like to think that I've helped in trying to do that. Now, I don't know. I know Bruce Tharp fairly well. I know Fred Richards fairly well. I know Chris Ronquillo fairly well. I haven't worked intimately with these people. And I'm excited and also trepidatious, to be perfectly frank, because I am not, nor have I ever been, a member or a member of the board of directors or on any booking committees or in any really decision-making capacity with the National Wrestling Alliance. I've always been the guy with his tights and boots who has an opinion and is not afraid to share it, but likewise will get on a horse and ride. And if the new leadership in the organization is poised to make leaps, then I'd like to see leaps as opposed to baby steps. I like some of the things that they've proposed. I'm not afforded access to as much information as, frankly, I would like to have, honestly. But again, I'm not in a decision-making position, nor am I saying that I really would want to be. But as somebody who has worn the banner and carried it for the National Wrestling Alliance as proudly as I have over the last 5 years, I would love to see unity. I'd love to see structure. I'd love to see a uniformity, I think, that has been missing. And I think, as much as I owe Bob Frobich a lot of credit for the things that I've been able to do for the last 5 years, nobody is perfect. Nobody's perfect. And he was forced to wear a lot of hats that, frankly, and I think he would admit this, I don't think he was prepared to wear. And there are things that could have been done, sure, and hindsight affords us all this clarity on what could have been and what perhaps should have been. But now that's up to our new bosses. to bring those things to fruition, to see out their own plan for the organization, and if that plan leads to growth, and that growth leads to stability, and that stability leads to reaching heights that this organization and this brand hasn't in so many decades, I'm 100% for it. And I think anybody would be foolish to think otherwise.
Because as of this moment, as this interview is being taped, the current NWA World Tag Team Champions, the Dark City Fight Club, the Junior Heavyweight Champion of the world, the modern-day hero Kevin Douglas, the Women's World Champion Tasha Simone, and yourself, the 5-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion. I've said this during our regular broadcasts, and I said this before August 17th. Champions such as the world champions that are listed, not to mention the North American champions, single and tag, the national champions, which you've known a number of people have held those different titles over the last few years.
Certainly.
Deserve a position of national prominence and visibility. And as I told Bruce Tharp, from my opinion and my perspective, that visibility has to be there. Because there are people on the West Coast who've never had a chance to see the women's title, the women's champion,
sure,
the World Tag Team Champions. Kevin Douglas, I have to say this, champ, with all due respect, if there is one person right now who is almost, and I use that term, almost matching your pace, it would be the world's junior heavyweight champion, Kevin Douglas.
Well, I applaud him for that. And in fact, I've talked to him several times about that. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's important to think of things from a different perspective as well. And I would say this is a challenge to everybody who's wearing a championship belt in the National Wrestling Alliance or anywhere in wrestling for that perspective or from that position. You can't rely on anybody to give you a platform. You can't rely on anybody to give you visibility. You can't rely on anybody to give you a vehicle to show the world what you have. We are all, regardless of who is the promoter, of who owns the brand, of who, whatever, we are all, and we always will be in this industry because it's the way it works, independent contractors. That, by definition, means we work for ourselves first and foremost. And as a brand, because we all are a brand, as a brand, you have a responsibility to yourself to make sure that you are maximizing the potential that you have. And this is not an easy business. It is a very tough business. And I wish, and I hear that when I hear the words uniformity, and I hear the words requirement to book champions, I wish that those things were happening or were being put in force 5 years ago. Because when I look back, and you could verify this easily, when I look back at the championship matches that I've had weighing the 10 pounds of gold, I would say, and I could go back and verify this to the fifth decimal place, but I would guess, just off the top of my head as we talk, that 75% of my championship matches have taken place outside of National Wrestling Alliance promotions. Not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just simply saying that's a fact. Okay? Now what that means is, just what I said, I got on the horse, and I rode. And largely, I did it myself. I didn't have a booking agent. I worked with some, but I didn't have someone exclusively booking me, nor did I have a brand exclusively booking me. I was on every continent I could get on because I busted my ass to get there. And it just so happened that in my bag was 10 pounds of gold that I decided to bring along with me. Did it better me as a performer? Did it bring something else to the table that plain old scrap iron Adam Pearce probably didn't bring? Yes. But at the same time, I was doing the same thing for my sweet Charlotte, who was probably riding on somebody's shelf for far too long. So again, bottom line is, rely on yourself, and anything else you get above and beyond that is icing on the cake if you want to be a professional wrestler on the independent scene.
First off, I wondered how long it was going to take, or if I was going to have to be the one to make the reference to Sweet Charlotte. Thank you for doing it for me. Number two, I appreciate the fact that you're willing to venture, and this is professional to professional, that you're willing to venture into non-NWA territories, areas, promotions to help promote the visibility and the presence of the championship.
That's it.
Because this whole industry, and this is something that I've preached for a long time, you and I have had conversations off air about this. There's a 7-letter word that Aretha Franklin made very prominent by spelling it out. And this is something that I've preached from my little bully pulpit here in Birmingham, Alabama, since the inception of this show in 1997. And that is respect for this industry. Respect for the business. Respect for ourselves as professionals that we hope to be. The elevation of ourselves going from wrestlers to workers.
Right.
Because for somebody just cracking the gate, there's a big difference between the two. And one thing that I have seen in an inimitable fashion, and folks, for those of you listening, if you honestly think that I'm just sitting here trying to stroke Adam's ego, guess what? You're wrong. Am I trying to be politically correct? No. Am I being diplomatic? To a degree, yes. And I'm trying to be...
Well, if you want to stroke the ego, go ahead. I like that.
But I needed that. Thank you. Yeah, have you really had an interviewer or somebody talk to you in this manner that actually has tried to do their homework to find out a little bit more about you before you go on the air with them the first time?
Oh, you know what? It's more fun when they don't. It's a lot more, well, for me anyway, it's a lot more fun when they don't. And it's also fun when I got the guy that's doing the interview that's obviously reading Wikipedia. Because, you know, while a lot of the stuff is accurate, a lot of it's not. And it's always fun to catch those things.
Well, there were some things that we hit on during the first interview that you kind of went pop, 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 pop. And that I did actually do a little bit of research on Wikipedia, but I was also following you in different capacities through different sources before that first interview. When you came on with us, I believe one of your first interviews was in July of 2011. I'm looking at the promotional poster right now that's on the wall. You know, I've made the reference to the term visibility and respect for the industry, respect for the branding, and respect for ourselves in this industry on more than one occasion. And with everything happening and the new day dawning for the National Wrestling Alliance, everything starting on August 17th.
Right.
You know, we talk about elevation, and I can think of two particular occasions where the championship has been visible outside of technically NWA territory, and in my humble opinion, the way I look at things, it was a good thing. Number one, going chronologically, technically speaking, when I believe it was the original Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Jim Cornette and company, had Dan Severn and the NWA World Championship featured on Monday Night Raw for a number of weeks. The NWA Tag Champions were visible on Monday Night Raw. And at a different point in time, you yourself was featured as the NWA Champion as a part of Ring of Honor, ROH Wrestling.
Right.
Can I ask you to touch on that one for a second?
That was great. You know, I mean, I think, again, here we are in a very different wrestling world, you know, than it may have been in the heyday of the 70s and 80s. And I think visibility, which, you know, leads directly to relevance for something for particular NWA who didn't have a national broadcast at either point in time. I don't think there was an NWA branded program nationally seen when Dan was champion, and certainly there hasn't been one in any of the 5 years that I've been, you know, graced with the 10 pounds of gold. So in order to spearhead a movement to keeping, again, visibility and thereby relevance, eyes on the prize, as it were, I think you do things and work with people in trying to do that. And certainly the time that I spent with Ring of Honor, both as NWA champion and with that, were great times in my life and my wrestling career, obviously. But as it pertains to the NWA, it was, to me, a no-brainer. And I had wanted to I had the belt for several months before it was finally, the subject was finally even broached by the ROH side of even entertaining the idea of showcasing and featuring that belt. Because, again, doing that, you know, you open the booking up to different things, and, you know, it's they had their own brand to promote, their own championships to get over, and I understand all of that. But when the opportunity came, when I approached the board of directors at the time and said, "Hey, I've got a chance to do this," thankfully they agreed with me that it was a no-brainer. I mean, to me, there was no thought. There was no thought to it. Would you like to be featured as NWA champion? I think for me personally and for the brand, unequivocally, the answer had to be yes. I mean, it would be foolish to have said no. And I agree with. I think the same thing. When I think about Dan Severn being featured as champion on Smoky Mountain, again, visibility and relevance, and that's what we need to strive for. And without a national entity, without a mothership, if you will, for the brand, you've got to do things. You've got to be creative, and you've got to be flexible in allowing people to do that. I was just fortunate enough to have connection enough to be able to, get to that point. And had the powers that be at that point said no, I would have struggled with that, trying to understand why. But again, I'm just a guy with tights and boots, man. They just let me wear the 10 pounds of gold. It's not mine. You know what I mean? But again, if you're not in this thing to make money, visibility and relevance are probably two of the key ingredients to, especially in our business, toward doing that. And I'm not sure what your goal is.
If the National Wrestling Alliance can put together a national broadcast, a showcase for the champions and for the talent that runs so deep and so prevalent in the National Wrestling Alliance, what one television market will you sit back and smile and go, yep, guess what? That's me in your living room?
Man, I think overall, if there were to be a national broadcast, I think it would make the most sense financially to find that broadcast in your major markets. So your New Yorks, your Chicagos, your Los Angeles, your Dallas, your San Franciscos, your Philadelphias. The places that have been hotbeds for wrestling too wouldn't hurt. I can think of the Mid-Atlantic area, especially for the National Wrestling Alliance. I mean, up in the Twin Cities and places that are notoriously known for wrestling, and obviously throughout the South, there's a number of examples. But I think if you're the only reason to have a broadcast is to drive people to live events or to drive them to something, internet pay-per-view, or whatever the case may be, your chances of running a broadcast television product and drawing enough revenue from sold advertising in that hour, it's not 1983 anymore. Yeah, the world is a very different place. And the fortunate thing, I think, for any wrestler or wrestling company is that the internet allows you to do that now without the expense of having to find a television provider or sponsorship or partners to share revenues with. And I think, and I've been a big proponent of this even when I was working in Ring of Honor and I was dying to get things moving towards an internet pay-per-view thing. And I'm proud to say that was one of my ideas that came to fruition when I was running wrestling operations there. In no way reflecting of how bad their service may be now, and with all due respect to people who are there now that I have an extreme affinity for. If you're going to do it, you got to do it right. But that being as it may, you've got to be visible in your major areas if you're going to go television. There's no two ways about it. You're not going to make money paying for slots anywhere. If you're going to syndicate, you've got to have the right deal. It's not as simple as calling WXYZ TV in whatever town USA and saying, hey, we've got wrestling. It simply doesn't work that way. There's a lot that goes into that. And, a lot of preparation, and it costs money. And I don't know how realistic national television for the NWA is. I don't know at what point it ever will be, truthfully. I could see an internet broadcast happening a lot easier, a lot smoother, and a lot cheaper, and a lot faster, frankly.
Okay.
So, we'll see what happens there. But again, if you're doing that and you're not putting it in front of as many eyes as you possibly can, then you're wasting your time.
Understandable. I talk about respect for the industry, and that's something that you've done. You've shown the respect to the industry. You've not only shown the respect for the business and the industry, but also for the company, the branding, and the championship. something that you and I agree on. Belts don't make champions. Champions make championships.
Yeah, I think that goes. To me, it should go without saying. I've got friends, people whose opinions I respect greatly, who at various times over the last 5 years have flatly told me they thought I was wasting my time investing so much effort and energy in something that had long, in many opinions, had long been forgotten. And that was always my crux, that there was no reason that I could find that the NWA World title should be forgotten for any reason. As the godfather to all wrestling championships in our country, I think that we have a responsibility as people within the industry not only to remember our history and our heritage, but to honor it and treat it with the respect that it deserves. And I will be the first to tell you that I have not always agreed with the leadership of the National Wrestling Alliance as I have dealt with it along the way. Today, 5 years ago, it's no different, but I've always held that championship, the 10 pounds of gold, my sweet Charlotte, as I like to call her, in the highest of regards. And that is because of the people who worked before me, the people who we all owe a debt of gratitude to for the fact that we're allowed to put on a pair of tights and boots and call ourselves professional wrestlers, much less tour this country, this continent, this globe doing so.
I've made a reference to a lot of kids who are, and at my age I can still call a bunch of them kids, who are training, who are getting into this business, who the only exposure they have to this business is what I call the MTF syndrome, Monday, Thursday, Friday. And one thing that I will tell them, and now with the advent, with YouTube being as prevalent as it is, YouTube, Daily Motion, you get a chance to see some of the broadcasts from the 70s, the 80s, and early 90s. And I tell these kids, do your homework. See where this business was before you were born. See where this business was when you were just hitting puberty, or the first time you put solid food in your mouth.
Right.
Because you do yourself a disservice by not studying and doing your homework on the history and traditions of this industry. Now, I've also said there's a lot of things that people in this business over 10 years aren't going to talk about. But that's a natural. Sure. Because you have to be able to find out on your own. Now, going into a locker room for the first time, yeah, you might get somebody pull you to the side. It's like, see that guy over there? He's notorious for pulling a rib. Watch your gear. Which, that in and of itself is a godsend. As one who has been pranked before. And taking a little bit of a turn. I'm going to shift gears just for a second if I can. Because with all the different places you've been, with all the different people you've met, you know I'm huge on road stories. But I also know you don't get a chance to spend that much time in one particular area. Because I remember, I'm going to bring up one, and Wicked Nemesis is probably going to do a cartwheel when he hears this. When you and I worked the show at the OSF, the Ohio State Fair, you were getting ready to make a trip back to Missouri, if I remember correctly. You were getting ready to hit the road virtually right then and there. And
yeah, I don't even remember. I'm sure I was going somewhere.
But if there was any one particular story that pops into your head, say, and I'm not going to ask you to go all the way back. I'm just going to say recent history, say the last year or two, since everything has gone haywire. What would be the first real road story that pops into your head? And you can change the names to protect the guilty.
Jeez, boy, talking about putting me on the spot. I don't know. Man, because it's crazy. As you say, people ask me, oh, you must have seen a lot of places. My answer always is no. It's usually airport, hotel, venue, hotel, airport. And that's it. Road story. See, this is where the interview goes from awesome to horrible, because I don't really have anything funny off the top of my head that I'm coming up with. I'm drawing a blank, man. I apologize.
While you're thinking, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a second to think about that one while I ask you about ribs, pranks, and practical jokes. Because I know with the people that you've run around with, there have been some priceless ones.
My favorite one, and this, this perhaps was the beginning of the end of the friendship of Cole Cabana and myself. I like a good rib. I don't know that anybody likes to be on the receiving end of a good rib. but usually anger is the result of a good rib.
Yeah, true.
At least in my experience. Colt Cabana's first road trip, this would have been 1998 to Minnesota in December, freezing cold, if I remember right. I remember being at a hotel. I don't remember what we were doing at that hotel or who, but I digress. It was very cold, and Cabana's jacket ended up missing, and the person who had stolen this jacket decided to take it with him into the restroom, as it were. And while that person may be number one in your hearts, I think he was performing number two at that point. And let's just say that when cleansing himself, perhaps the TP ended up in the sleeves of Cabana's jacket.
Oh.
And the pockets.
Ouch.
And in the collar.
Oh, man.
And, so, just put it this way. There's one person on this planet who when he speaks to Colt Cabana, refers to him as fish pockets.
Priceless and ruthless at the same time. I like that.
Exactly. And this was going back now. This was, 15 years ago? Almost.
Yeah. I mean, and with the places you've been and the people that you've met, I mean, if you really were to sit down and write the book, or at least voice-to-text transcription,
right,
would the number of incidents that you'd be afraid to forget go into the teens, the 20s, the hundreds, or possibly even over 1,000?
I mean, I've forgotten. And that's the sad part. When you actually try to sit down and think about things, and, I've been so lucky to have been able to be a part of this thing now for 17 years. To think back, I mean, the amount that I'm able to recall, I'm sure is got to be maybe 20% of everything that happened. And from time to time, I'll get a phone call or somebody say, "Hey, remember this?" And it'd be something that I haven't called to, in years. And I think that's a great thing about being around for a while and forging relationships in this business and having a longevity is that, you touch people, people touch you. Sometimes you don't like the way they touch you. Sometimes it's funny. Maybe it's not funny when it happens, but you can look back on it. It's part of the experience, man.
It really is.
It's part of the ride. It's part of the ride.
It really is. There's something I'd like to ask your personal opinion about. Away from everything else. And current day, Beyond Ringside, broadcast live, Sundays 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern. And we do it on this wonderful thing called the World Wide Web. To ask if broadcasters who cover this industry should be held to a code of honor and or code of ethics, I'm sure would be sitting back going, yeah, there's how many grapes in a bunch?
Right.
But by the same token, and I know that you probably got mixed feelings about different shows, different people who run different shows, but as far as it goes, do you feel on the whole that most of the sites and most of the broadcasters out there are fair to the business?
I think they're all fair to their own business, and I don't limit that to broadcasters or writers or whatever you want to call it. I think that's just everybody in general. I don't think that's just necessarily, having to do with wrestling. I mean, I don't know, man. I think we live in a very selfish world, and the first thought, I think, in general, of most people, isn't about someone else. It's about themselves and how things benefit themselves, and what will this do for me, or what could this potentially do for me down the line? And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying, particularly as it pertains to wrestling, that's what I see. And I'm sure, I'm as guilty of that as anybody else. But to the business as a whole, I mean, I think it's hard. It's hard because there are people that I know and have known and had relationships with for, decades who are involved in, exploiting wrestling. And that's really what it's all about. Now, sometimes it's for the betterment, I think, of things, but sometimes you know, you got to draw your numbers. You've got to have somebody listening or reading, and you've got to put something out there that perhaps you wouldn't ordinarily want to. But again, is that really any different from any other walk of life? You know, I think there's a definite tabloid nature to wrestling reporting, and I don't know that people are, you know, journalism majors necessarily, or communications majors, and living up to standards that maybe otherwise would be, you know, expected in other avenues. But again, it is what it is, right? How many grapes are in a bunch? And for every bad one, and there's a couple that irritate me pretty regularly, like I said, there's plenty of people who've been on that side of the microphone and have been very good to me and to people that I've worked with and for. And those resources are invaluable because, again, and this isn't relegated to wrestling only, perception is reality.
True.
Whether you want it to be or not. And reality isn't always perception. You know what I mean?
Yep. Unequivocally.
So, yeah, you know, I mean, I've been on the good side and the bad side of reportings, and some have been true and some haven't been true. I think if you treat yourself, and more importantly, those around you, with a level of respect, and this is as cliche gets, but Mama Pearce told me a very long time ago, treat people how you'd like to be treated. And generally speaking, that is exactly what will happen.
In most cases, I would say that's true. But yet, once again,
Yeah.
you've got a couple of bad apples out there that actually want to think that they're better than the rest. And
Absolutely. But again, I don't think that doesn't go for wrestling and wrestling only. That's every damn walk of life.
that's true. That's true.
You know what I mean? There's always somebody smarter. There's always somebody that can do it better. There's always somebody who's got the scoop. And there's always somebody who's going to throw you under that bus.
And therein lies the funny part, because for me, I just want to see people who do it right. And
Right. Yeah, I'm with you.
That's
I'm with you, man.
I know it's an idealistic point of view, but that's just me. I do have that ideal in place. There are two nights in particular. Segue. And Dale Jr. goes wide in turn 4. Speaking of, do you ever catch NASCAR?
Not a fan. My brother loves it. I just simply, and I don't know if I don't have the attention span, but me watching guys drive around in a circle or an oval or whatever the hell they're driving around for hours at a time does not appeal to me. Now, if I was there live in Darlington or wherever the case may be, drinking beer all day, perhaps this is a different story. But, you know, it doesn't reach out to me, man. I don't know what to do. Sorry to the South. Don't hate me. Well, actually, please continue to hate me.
You just hit a perfect one that I want to ask you about. There are some areas of this country where Scrap Iron Adam Pearce is a beloved character, borderline hero.
Very few.
And there are a number of areas in this country to where it would be worth the financial investment to hire a motorcade to get you out of town.
It's happened. Hello, Mexico. Yeah, it's happened.
That sounds like a road story in and of itself.
Yeah, there's one I could bring up.
Go for it.
You know, man, it's God, I don't even know what year it would be. I had a pretty good run on the independents in Mexico, particularly in the northern states, centered around Tijuana, probably 2004 to 2008 or so. And every Friday night at the Auditorio de Tijuana, which is the building made famous by guys like Rey Mysterio Jr. and Psychosis when they came up, and even before that with Rey Mysterio Sr., and of course guys like Santo and Blue Demon and La Parca, you name it, they've been through that building. It's hallowed ground for Lucha Libre. You know, they for every once in a while, you know, every year or two or so, they'll run with the evil American gimmick, which is surefire. There, being so close to the border, there's always, you know, and I can't imagine living on that side of the border, being so close to San Diego, where I live, being over on the other side, realizing I'm never going to be able to go there. You know, there has to be a natural resentment, and then for us to be able to come down there and perform. One time, and I can't remember everybody that was in the car, but one of the guys is now a writer on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. His name is Joe Franciosi, who's lovingly known to us around the area as Joe Schmo, who worked for WWE for a short time on the writing team and has been around the business probably, I don't know, a decade or more at least.
Okay.
And he came down one night, and as is customary when you're the American heels, in Tijuana, is, you stay in the building till the show's over. Regardless, we could have been on third. You don't leave. You don't chance leaving until the coast is the proverbial coast is clear.
Right.
And because the Lucha Libre is such a cultural phenomenon, and with that, as awesome as that atmosphere is, with that, there is a dedicated and concerted effort to keeping Lucha Libre as believable as possible. And that means those fans, generally speaking, in that building, believe what they see. Doesn't mean if the show's over, they're going to change their mind. Doesn't mean if they see you on the street after the show, their opinion's going to suddenly be different. That means if you're the heel and you've just screwed over the top babyface in that building, then when it's time to go home, you better make sure that a federale or some type of policia is ready to drive you back to the border. And usually that's what happened. One night we're driving back, we're having a few beers, we're in a car, and this was all set up ahead of time, but we didn't tell Joe because it was his first time down there. So we're driving back to the border, and we get pulled over by the federales, which is generally not a good thing when there's a bunch of gringos in the car. What that normally ends up with is everybody's pulling their wallet out and paying the piper, so to speak. But this is both a rib and a road story at the same time. Well, here comes the federales. We're all in this car. We're all drinking. I do not advise nor condone the actions of grown men driving in Mexico, drinking while they're driving in Mexico. So for those of you listening, Scrap Daddy was a bad boy that day. Don't do it. Do not try this at home. We get pulled over. Joe is immediately freaking out because we're drinking in the car. He doesn't realize we're not in the States and that the rules, if they exist in Mexico, are maybe different. Federales come to the car. Oh, did I mention they're carrying AK-47s?
Oh, my God.
This is common, man. This is commonplace. The police and the federal police in particular, they're outfitted, man. There's a lot of places in the country down there now, and especially now, but even at that point, that would be considered war zones, drug cartels.
Right.
And there's a lot of problems. I mean, the bottom line is if you don't have to go there, don't go there. And this is someone who loves going there telling you that. So here comes federales. They've got their guns drawn. They've got them on the car. They get us all out. Of course, I know what the scoop is. Joe now, who's had probably 5 or 10 too many, has no idea what's going on, as the rest of us are trying not to snicker at him. Well, they zero in on him. Give us your money. Pull out your wallet. He never picked up on the fact that he was the only one they were asking. The funny part is, we got 6 federales, all with AK-47s, pointed at Joe Schmo. He's fumbling through his wallet, trying not to cry. He's screaming, I only got $20. I only got $20. You can't drink and drive in Mexico, but we all were drinking. And then they look at us, and we all say, of course, no, we weren't.
Oh.
I only got $20. Only got $20. And it probably went on 10 or 15 minutes before they finally said, cabron, we're kidding, blah, blah, blah. And then we all had a beer. And everything was great. But for that 15 minutes, he thought he was going to the clink in Mexico at gunpoint. And all he had was $20, and that sure as hell wasn't going to save his life that night. And that was funny.
That would have been, I would have liked to have been the fly on the wall for that one. That would.
I think I was the fly on the wall for that one, because I was drunk, and it was funny.
Were you a fly on the wall or fly swimming on the wall?
Could have been both.
There you go. There is a phrase that has been made prevalent, starting with one man, and a number of people have used that phrase over the years. It's I have a dream. Away from everything else, as Scrap Iron Adam Pearce, or as Adam Pearce, what is your dream, your vision for professional wrestling? Whether it be as the NWA or whether it be professional wrestling in general.
Well, that's a broad one. Yeah, I mean, obviously, as somebody who has been fortunate enough to have been on many sides of things, on both sides of the camera, and have worn many hats. Some fit right, some didn't fit so right. I've long thought of pro wrestling in this country is one of those unique American art forms. Jazz music, comic books, pro wrestling. I mean, those three jump out to me immediately. I'd love to see a dedication by wrestling fans to something other than what they see on, Monday, Thursday, Friday. Is that the right dates?
Yep, I think so.
There's so much more going on, and the independents are the foundation, the proving ground, the breeding ground, whatever you want to call it or however you want to look at it. The independents, the stars of tomorrow are easily found in high schools and swap meets and, VFW halls today. And I would urge anybody who's a fan of professional wrestling to broaden your horizons and just simply look for what you can find. And if you're content watching on Monday, Thursday, and Friday, then God bless you for that. Thank you for supporting the industry in whatever way you can. Just, there's so much more out there and so much different talent that deserves merit, deserves praise, and deserves exposure, and deserves respect. How's that for an answer?
Solid as a rock, which leads me into this. There's two dates that come to mind, but I know we talked a little bit earlier about a number of dates that you've got coming up. September the 29th in Gloucester, Virginia, at the Gloucester Moose Lodge. NWA Fusion. You'll be going one-on-one with the Pain Train, Preston Quinn.
First time ever.
The following night, on September the 30th, in Salem, Oregon, in a Texas death match, Colt Cabana.
Yep. Find me a champion on this planet that's going to do that kind of distance in less than a day.
Because you made the reference earlier to going across country.
Literally.
Yeah.
Coast to coast in less than a day. Now, I mean, and that's not to take away from either of those two matches because they're obviously on my schedule and obviously important. But I'm not looking past this weekend. Milwaukee, Friday night, Brew City Wrestling against a man, 275 pounds, a Sadist, former NWA Midwest champion. The next night I've got Heath Hatton down in Southern Illinois. And I come home for a couple of days. And as you said, the 29th in Gloucester, we got Preston Quinn, somebody I have a lot of respect for, somebody who I've been around numerous times. Been around this business for a very long time. He's at the top of his game. He's been largely overlooked, I think. And there's a lot of guys in the Mid-Atlantic area who fit that bill. Extremely talented, have all the respect in the world for him, but for whatever reason, they don't fans, so would have a much bigger name than he does now. And that's not taken away from the name that he does have because I have a lot of respect for him. So it'll be an honor on the 29th in Gloucester. And if I survive and I'm able to walk on that plane, I'm going to, we're going to do 3,000 miles back the other way and land in Oregon, which is always... After seeing what's going on in the first 5 stages. And, this one's far from over, man. It's far from over.
And that one's going to be... Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, if I have my way, it'll be tied at 3-3, and I don't know if you've received the briefing or not, but I can now confirm that if this goes the full 7, if it comes down to excuse me for the cliche, but Game 7 of the World Series, that will be in late October in Australia.
I'm wondering which airlines are going to service that trip.
God bless United Airlines.
Ah, there you go. Shameless plug for United Airlines. You hear that, people? Give the champ a discount.
Shameless plug for all my frequent flyer miles, man. I'm sorry, I used to Old man, I'm too old to care. And those free upgrades to first class have swayed me to saying I must be on United.
The September 30th event is going to be at the Adam Stevens High School in Salem, Oregon. That is recent days. The show on the 29th is going to have a 7 p.m. start time at the Gloucester Moose Lodge. And like I said, you know me, I'm going to try to do as much homework as I can. That way, we try to get the names of the shows, the start times, the locations. I don't have an address for the Stevens High School or the Adam Stevens School, or I would be more than happy to put that out there. I guarantee you I'll put it out there this coming Sunday on the 23rd. The 23rd on the live episode of Beyond Ringside. We'll get all those addresses out there, all the venue names out there, and if able, ticket information. Because that's the number one purpose for this show, all the way across the board, is to bring awareness. I do have to ask a question, and you know me, I'm gonna use those famous two words, promo mode. You said you've got the Sadist coming up. If you get past him, then you're going on to Preston Quinn. If you get past him, level 6. I'm going to ask you for those direct messages to Sadist, to Preston, and of course to Colt.
Man, don't forget Heath Haddon. People are overlooking the man named Heath Haddon down there in Southern Illinois. Hook him after Sadist. But the bottom line is this, man. I am in the fight for my wrestling life. And you can look at this any way you want to. You can draw on any cliche you want to. You can look at any sporting event in the world. When it comes down to being backed into a corner, when you put the dog in the corner, got no other way to go but forward. So Sadist, I apologize to you ahead of time. Heath Haddon, you're a young kid. You're coming up in this business. I apologize to you ahead of time. Preston Quinn, I respect you. I have shared a fine Pilsner beverage with you on many an occasion. But yes, you too. On Coke. And yes, you could say, look at me. Well, I'm good enough to do that. I think the record bears that out. So to these gentlemen who stand in between me and Salem, Oregon on September the 30th, I apologize. And you could take that literally, figuratively. You could turn it sideways. You could stick it where it doesn't shine. I could really care less. Because if there's a man on this planet who's going to knock me off the top of my perch, I will give him the same credit. But right now, I don't see anybody doing it. Colt Cabana has what I have wanted for a long time, and that is revenge. It's simple. And it leads a man to do things he wouldn't ordinarily do, but I'm not an ordinary man, am I?
Nope.
I'm 5 times the NWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Champion. No one will ever take that away from me. And the only man on this planet to both pin me and submit me for that 10 pounds of gold has revenge coming his way. He knows it. I know it. The wrestling fans know it. The promoters involved know it. Tickets are going fast, and they have. You can ask any promoter we've worked with for 7 levels of hate. The bottom line is we're coming for a fight. I'm not going to be kissing any babies. I don't even like shaking. I've got one focus. I've got one purpose. I've got one plan. And that is win. Because if I don't, I go home. And Mama Pearce ain't going to be happy with Daddy if Sweet Charlotte ain't coming home with him. And that's just simply how it is. So to Sadist, to Heath Haddon, to Preston Quinn, and to you, Colt Boom Boom Cabana, I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry.
In 4 different areas, on 4 different nights, you have an opportunity to catch and to take in the experience surrounding the National Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight Champion Scrap Iron Adam Pearce. Friday night, September the 21st in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, at the Knights of Columbus Hall, Brew City Wrestling. Adam Pearce will be taking on the Sadist. On Saturday night, September the 22nd, in Marion, Illinois, a part of All American Wrestling. Adam Pearce versus Heath Hatton. On the 29th, Gloucester, Virginia, World Championship on the line. Scrap Iron Adam Pearce taking on the Pain Train, Preston Quinn. And if he makes it through those three, on the 30th, in Salem, Oregon, 7 levels. And I shut it down 4-2. In those 4 cities, 4 great promotions, 4 main event matches. If you get a chance to, get a ticket, check it out. I guarantee, because I've had a chance to watch some of the footage from some of the different promotions. I've had a chance to do a little bit of research. The only one that I haven't had a chance to do that much research on is Heath Hatton, and I apologize for that. But I look forward to the opportunity. Mark your calendars, make your plans. If you are within distance of any one of these 4 shows, the 21st, the 22nd, the 29th, and the 30th, and dates go on past that, you owe it to yourself to take the time, make the time, create the time, check it out firsthand. Don't hope there's going to be a YouTube video. Take it in firsthand. If you call yourself a fan of professional wrestling, a real fan of pro wrestling, you owe it to yourself to do it. Check it out. 4 nights, 4 great cities. How can people keep track of Scrap Iron Adam Pearce on this wonderful thing called the World Wide Web?
Well, I've got a Facebook, which I never thought I would have, frankly, but I do, and coincidentally, it allows me the opportunity to bring you, the wrestling fan, access to wonderful. Daddy AP. And that's about as far as I go on the web, at least as far as I'm willing to admit.
There you go. There may be a TMZ video out there somewhere, right?
No comment.
No comment. Oh, by the way, before I let you run, I got to ask this one. You've gone through the lightning round here on Beyond Ringside before. There's a brand new question that we've added over the last few weeks, and I want to hit you with it.
All right.
From the lightning round. And Mabo's going to kill me for this. I'm referring to Mark Mabo Bowman, who I wish could be here. Same thing with my other tag team partner, the Wicked Nemesis. The zombie apocalypse has arrived. What reality star would be the first one that you would throw between you and the zombies that you could make your escape?
Kim Kardashian, easy. Easy. Then maybe nibble on her ass all night long.
This is a family show, Eddie. You can't follow up with the statement you wanted to make. I will say this. It is always a pleasure. Thank you for being so generous with your time. I mean, Adam, it's always great to have you on. You know the door is always open. All you got to do is shoot me a message, shoot me an email. You know, smoke signals, sometimes they work. I have a penchant for inhaling those, but that's an entirely different animal. Especially, of course, if it's smoked salmon. Insert fishy one-liner there. But... yeah, I know there's about 6 or 7 we could use right now. We'd lose that PG rating. Actually, I don't even claim to have a PG rating on here. I just claim to have fun and hope everybody who comes on does the same. But thank you again for being so generous with the time. It's always a pleasure.
My man, I appreciate you having me. God bless. And remember this. I don't know if I've told you this one before or not, but remember this. This is my pearl of wisdom for today, which I don't even know what day it is. But remember, wherever you go, there you are.
Be sure to join us on Sunday, 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central, 3:30 Pacific. Check out BeyondRingside.com. We are also available, letter ustream.tv/channel/beyond-ringside-live. Don't ask me to repeat that. I'll go list exit. Fun so much. We're also available on YouTube. Find us on Twitter at Beyond Ringside. Run it all together, one word. And Facebook.com/Beyond Ringside Live. Yes, we also have Facebook.com/Beyond Ringside, but somehow or another we ended up with close to 5,500 friends, and Facebook won't allow me to add anybody else, so please go to the fan page. Thank you for joining us on this very special edition of Beyond Ringside. Yours truly, the Magic City Motor Mouth Fast Eddie Layne, one-on-one with the 5-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Scrap Iron, Adam Pearce. We'll see you this Sunday, 5:30 p.m. Central Time, as we go Beyond Ringside. Bye for now.
This is Dale the Demon Torborg.
My name is Bryce Rensburg. I'm the Chikara Senior Official.
This is April Hunter from aprilhunter.com.
I'm Bobby Ches, a 3-time world champion, Showtime expert analyst.
This is Coolio with the Flow, a.k.a. the Ghetto Gourmet.
This is Dan the B7, the only Triple Crown champion in the UFC history.
Hi, everybody. This is Jerry the King Lawler. That's right, WWE Hall of Famer.
This is Jeff Damon from Deadliest Warrior on Spike TV.
You have tuned in and are now live listening to the 3-time NWA Heavyweight Champion of the World, Scrap Iron Adam Pearce. And just like you, I am also locked in. And, brother, we are Beyond Ringside.